Thank you, Rob, and good morning, everyone. Great to see everyone here. This is obviously my first Ontario Craft Brewers Conference, and I'm overwhelmed by really the size and magnitude of the conference, and just want to give congratulations to Christine and Jenny and everyone else that's involved with organizing this conference. It's really impressive, and this rookie looks forward to spending the rest of the day visiting everyone. Rob, thank you for that tremendous offer and support. We'll certainly take you up on that, and I want to thank all the other sponsors and exhibitors and suppliers who are helping to make this event such a great success. It is indeed an honor to be the new president of the association. I do have big shoes to fill, and I'll speak to that in a moment. But first of all, in terms of how fast this event is growing and how fast this industry is growing, I did want to recognize, I just scratched down a lot of the new members of the association that I was just talking to Drew, and it seems like we're getting another phone call or email every day from someone who's interested in joining the association. So bear with me, I just thought I'd take a moment to recognize those that have joined us in the last 12 months. And if you're here, just stand up or wave, but our friends from Lake Wilcox, are you here today? Way back in the corner, Full Beard, Haliburton Highlands, Upper Thames, Frank Brewing, Radical Road, Big Rock, Whiskey Jack, Calabogie, Concession Road, Canadian Park. I think you get the idea. Thank you for your support and interest in being part of the association, and also Draft Logistics, who is a new associate member. Again, as I referenced earlier, before I go any further, I want to take a moment to thank my predecessor, John Hay, who founded this association in 2003, and he's really worked tirelessly since then, and that's kind of an overused term, but it's really true in John's case. I had the pleasure of meeting John when I was at Brewers Retail back in 2002 or 2003 when he started the association, and it's amazing how fast time flies, but I think there was maybe a dozen members then. And I really sincerely think that we wouldn't have this scale of an industry and this conference as an example without the spade work and groundwork that John did to lay such a strong foundation for the industry. And I think John is here today, if I'm not mistaken. Are you out there, John? Please stand, John. I want to take a moment to thank you. And as mentioned, John will be recognized at the Pioneers panel today, so I look forward to being part of that. So I thought it would be best if I start my comments today with a little bit of personal history to help you get to know me a little bit better. And Rob referenced my background. I did spend 7 years in the brewing industry from 2001 to 6 with the beer store head office, and worked with my good friend Ted Mraz, who's here today as well. I think Ted's out making a phone call, but you're going to hear from Ted later on. And then spent some time with Lakeport Brewing with George Croft and Teresa Cascioli. So made a lot of friends in the industry, and I've met a few again this morning. It's like old home week, but it's great to be back in the industry. As Rob mentioned, my last 10 years I was the CEO for Golf Canada, the governing body for golf in this country, running the Canadian Open, and any of you who play golf probably follow the news of what's potentially happening with Glen Abbey Golf Club, and was very actively involved in that. And it was a difficult decision to leave that post, but when I saw the opportunity to come back to the beer industry, and especially in this area of the industry, I've watched the impressive growth over the last few years, and I jumped at the chance to take this position. Since I started in mid-August, so it's been about 2 months, and as I've said to many people, it's been like drinking from the fire hose. But it's been great. I've met a lot of the great consultants that work for OCB right now, a lot of our members, suppliers, government officials, other key stakeholders, and I've really been listening, and I think you have to do that when you start a new job, learning, getting a better understanding of what we're currently doing as an organization to try to help assist you move the industry forward. My top priority in the early going has been to initiate a new strategic planning process. And again, that's a buzzword and an overused term, but I think it's critically important here. We're at a different stage than we were when John started the organization, and when you see this tremendous growth, we really have to define who we want to be and what do you want us to be as an association going forward, and create a new vision of where we think we can be in 5 to 10 years to assist you moving things forward. So it's been fantastic. It's probably the best thing I could have ever done in terms of starting, because we've had focus groups right across Ontario with our members: Toronto, Burlington, London, Oshawa, Ottawa, Gravenhurst. So I've got to meet probably 45 to 50 member breweries already in the first 60 days, which is outstanding. We've also spoken to non-members. I mean, it's critical to get the views of the people who are not members of the association and try to understand why. And we also talked to some of those previously mentioned stakeholders in various other areas of the business. We hope to have this plan ready to share by year end. That's moving pretty quickly, but I think we have to get that done to set the foundation for what we're going to do going forward. In addition to the strategic plan, and we talked about this yesterday at our AGM, we're embarking on an industry benchmarking study, and got some good feedback on that yesterday too about how we might want to tweak that. But I think that will really help us better understand the current overall financial and business metrics of the industry, and allow all of you to better understand and benchmark yourselves against your peers, and where you may be able to improve your individual performance. It really is an exciting time for the industry. I don't need to tell you that. You guys are responsible for this rapid growth, and the numbers really illustrate that growth. If I just look at the number of breweries, in 1994 there was 25 breweries in this province. 17 years later, in 2011, there was 48 craft breweries and 9 contract brewers. A short 3 years later, in 2014, there were 105 and 38 respectively. In 2016, last year, there were 165 and 53. And today, and the numbers change daily, it's around 200 operating breweries, 30 brew pubs, 50 contract brewers, and there's well over another 100 in the planning stages. Total industry volume last year was 8 million hectoliters, and that was up 1.3% from a year ago. Craft was almost 500,000 hecs, 490,000 hectoliters, or 6.1% market share. And the number that blew me away, and it shouldn't have surprised me, craft sales volumes grew by 25.6% in 2016. I mean, that's impressive growth for any industry, and you should all be proud of that. As I noted yesterday, it's also important to note that these stats do not include the Mill Street numbers, as their numbers are now included in the mainstream numbers given the sale that happened a couple of years ago. So that growth is even more impressive when you think that you don't have that number in the base going forward. Channel growth was led by the LCBO. Craft was one of the fastest growing segments. And I don't have the exact numbers yet, but it looks like there's been impressive growth in TBS as well in 2017. And I think a lot of that's due to the changes in the Master Framework Agreement. And again, we're working with Ted and the folks at TBS to see how we can even be more effective in implementing that framework. Through 2016, there was over 2,000 direct brewery jobs, representing about 30% of all the direct brewery jobs in Ontario. And that's up from 1,600 in 2015. Annual capital expenditure is now $50 million on behalf of the industry, and that's up from $37 million the previous year. Again, just impressive growth. We've seen great improvements to retail access and are grateful to the Government of Ontario for supporting the growth of Ontario craft beer. As you all know, there's just over 300 grocery stores now authorized to sell beer. Another 95 were recently announced. 2016 craft share in grocery was just under 20%, and initial estimates show us holding that share this year in 2017. And ultimately, beer will be available in up to 450 grocery stores, and that's in addition to the 450 beer stores and 650 LCBO locations. Right now, just over 80 of Ontario craft breweries are currently members of the association, and as I mentioned, we're adding new members every month. I want to see that number get a lot higher. You know, when we have 80 some odd members and there's almost 200 breweries in the province, I really want to dig into why that is. So through this strategic planning process, we're really going to evaluate our value proposition and try to come up with something that will entice a lot of those non-members to join the association. I think we're better off when we work together. I think that's been demonstrated already. So that's a big project and priority for me going forward. The long-term vision has always been to make Ontario a center of craft brewing excellence for North America and the world, and I think you're well on the way to achieving that goal. And I'm just excited to be part of the ride. It's been great. First 2 months, I've met so many people. It's such a great industry to work in. I don't need to tell you that, and I'm just happy to be back. So now on to the conference. The theme of today's event is Business is Brewing, which is certainly no understatement. As I mentioned before, it's a massive event. We have over 700 registrants and over 140 suppliers, which I think is a record in the marketplace next door. And again, it's great to see so many representatives from so many breweries. It is now my pleasure to introduce today's keynote speaker, Matt Phillips, founder of Phillips Brewery in Victoria, BC. Matt started as a home brewer in university with a degree in microbiology and worked in brewery jobs in Alberta and BC until 2001. And that's when he bought a 7-barrel brew house and some used dairy tanks, moved them into a 1,300 square foot warehouse to create Phillips Brewing Company. His story is likely similar to many of you here. Matt leveraged a mountain of credit and credit card debt to get his start, slept on the floor of the brewery apparently, living out of his truck and second-guessing his decisions all along the way. I'm sure that's familiar to many of you. Matt was a one-man show for the first few years. The brewery has moved 2 times since being established and now encompasses a malting plant, distillery, and 2 brew houses. The brewery is host to several summer festivals and has earned many environmental awards for its commitment to sustainability. I'm sure Matt will have many pearls of wisdom to impart about his journey and the unique challenges of doing brewery business in the province of BC. Matt, great to have you here. Over to you.